Okay. It's been a fun day already and more fun in store. We just cannot wait. Need to put my glasses on so I can read the names before me. Getting old. Okay. So, how many of you were here for got to see the first panel? You did? Okay. Yeah, okay. I don't know what the echo here is, but in any event, as you know, we had 3 companies represented at the first panel, and we obviously are hearing not only from the park folks, but from folks who have potentially alternative views of testing and assessment and what Arkansas ought to be doing. So we have Dr. John Cronin, Senior Director of Educational Research at NWEA. Matthew Lisk, Executive Director of College Readiness Assessment, SAT, the College Board, and Jinny, Regional Account Executive, Riverside Publishing, Iowa Test of Basic Skills. We'll start with you, Dr. Cronin. We have basically the way we do this is each of you will get a 5-minute opening, and then we'll just start going around the council for questions, 5 minutes each. Any extra time after we've gone through once, any extra time, we'll just open it up and we'll use it up until we hit 1:50, which is when this panel is scheduled to end. So, Dr. Cronin, please start us off.
Guess I better turn the mic on, hadn't I? Good afternoon, and thanks to the Lieutenant Governor and other council members for the invitation to speak with you today. We want to use this brief amount of time to share a little bit about who we are and provide you with a bit of information about our tests, the Measures of Academic Progress, or MAP. Northwest Evaluation Association is a not-for-profit educational assessment and research organization. For 4 decades, educators have relied on MAP data to assess learning and improve classroom instruction. NWEA offers assessments in math, reading, language usage, and science for students in grades K-12, and science is students in grades 3 to 10. MAP assessments are computer adaptive. That means that MAP assessments are tailored to individual students based on how they respond to questions. The first time a student takes the MAP test, the test begins with a few questions that are at each student's grade level. Once a student begins to answer these questions, the test adapts based on their answers. If they answer correctly, the next item will increase in difficulty. If they answer incorrectly, the next item becomes easier. This adaptive process, combined with a scale that is not constrained by grade, assures that high and low performing students are assessed with the same accuracy as students performing at grade level. NWEA assessments are used by more than 8,000 schools and districts across 49 states and internationally. In Arkansas, NWEA assessments are taken by nearly 1/4 of the students in the state in 90 different schools or districts. Additionally, in Arkansas, more than 90% of the schools using MAP have transitioned successfully to our online platform and to our Common Core Line version of MAP. Let's talk about some of the features of MAP briefly at this point. In terms of alignment, NWEA creates MAP tests aligned to each state's academic standards, including the Common Core standards. Our first Common Core test was released in 2011 in Kentucky. We are committed to designing MAP versions that are aligned to any set of standards a state chooses to use. Efficiency. 2 of the primary reasons schools use MAP is due to the time needed to administer the test, which averages between 30 and 60 minutes on each subject on our interim assessment, and the speed with which teachers receive data from the test. Students get their test scores immediately. Teachers receive actionable reports within 24 hours. Technological capacity. We have a proven platform that already serves over 8 million students each year. Uptime on that platform is well over 99.5%. And at peak, we handle traffic that is equivalent to Twitter. So we have a platform that is very robust. It's an expandable platform. We can take that platform to as many students as we need to. It's very robust, and our technological capacity to deliver tests is simply unsurpassed. Accuracy. MAP tests yield a high level of accuracy for all students, not just those at grade level, because of the adaptive nature of the test and because it is not constrained by grade. Because of this, teachers receive accurate information that allows them to challenge high-performing students while at the same time know where to begin instruction for lower-performing students. Growth. Our main focus has always been on the measurement of growth, not just proficiency, and how much students are improving during the school year. This helps ensure that all students are the focus, not just students at or near grade level. Interim and summative offerings. While our main focus has been on growth, we understand the importance of a summative score, and because of that, we have created a blended model, and we've provided the details of that to the committee, that can access the benefit of measuring growth while providing a summative overview as well. We have provided documentation that describes this offering, but in short, by strategically blending interim and summative assessments, Arkansas can introduce an approach that reduces the amount of testing time and achieve something that summative assessments have been traditionally unable to provide, which is the provision of data that is relevant and actionable to instruction in the classroom. Finally, professional development. We have a strong professional development program and a network supporting our 90 schools in Arkansas already in place. Our professional development is classroom-centered and supports teachers in the use of instructional data. That has been our heritage as a company over 40 years. We were built by educators in the Pacific Northwest. That's how we started. And our tradition has been to serve classrooms and teachers. So that's basically where we all come from. Those are just a few examples of some beneficial aspects of the NWEA MAP test. Thank you so much, again, for inviting us here and our NWEA team. We'll be happy to respond to any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lisk.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, members of the panel, for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Matt Lisk. I am with the College Board. The College Board is a nonprofit member organization who administers widely known programs throughout the state of Arkansas, including the SAT, the PSAT NMSQT, a new assessment for the 8th and 9th grade called PSAT 8-9, as well as our AP program, Advanced Placement. I'm not a career educator. My background is in consulting. I've been with the College Board for 11 years. I've got 2 little boys, 9 and 6, and I'm heavily invested in this conversation that we're having today about how to better understand where our kids are and how do we get them ready for post-secondary success. In the time that I've been at the College Board, a lot of our programs have been focused on creating access for students, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit about our redesigned assessment system today, because that's exactly what we're setting out to do. I've got a couple of slides here real quick. I'm just going to use this one as our focal point. You have some pre-read materials in your binders with a lot more information about the College Board Readiness and Success System, but this is the one slide I'll use as a focal point. The 4 components of the College Board Readiness and Success System represent some of the unmatched benefits that we provide to students, educators, states, and districts, including focused, clear, and useful assessments that reflect what students are already learning in the classrooms. And this isn't our best guess as to what to measure. This is based on research. So the research shows that students that are successful and are ready for college have certain key skills. They can handle text complexity. They can analyze a source and use evidence. They can analyze data and graphics. They can understand words in context. They have a grasp of language conventions and effective language use. And they have a command of disciplinary literacy. And when it comes to math, they're focused on content that matters most, so problem solving and data analysis, about being quantitatively literate, including ratios, percentages, proportional reasoning to solve problems in science, social science, and career context. The heart of algebra, which focuses on the master of linear equations and systems, which helps students develop that key power of abstraction. And then finally, a passport to advanced math focuses on a student's familiarity with more complex equations and the manipulation they require. Research shows that these areas most contribute to readiness for college and career training. They're used disproportionately in a wide range of majors and careers, and the SAT will sample from additional topics in math, but keep a strong focus on these. That's what we mean when we're talking about focused assessments. Personalized practice. We've developed a partnership with the Khan Academy to develop free practice for the PSAT, NMSQT, and the SAT online for all students around the world. This is personalized practice, so it's not just generic. Students can take quizzes, they can upload results of previous exams, and it will tailor the content to their strengths and weaknesses. It'll take areas of focus, it will serve up engaging content, both video-based and quiz-based, to understand where students are and to propel them forward. College opportunity. When we're talking about creating opportunities for students, there are several different programs and tools that we offer as part of our assessment suite that quite frankly are unmatched, including AP Potential, which is a tool that takes the PSAT and NMSQT results and translates those into probability of success in our AP courses. So for instance, if a student is looking to take computer science and focus in STEM, we can use PSAT results to predict the likelihood of getting a 3 or better in an AP course for computer science, and then they would be able to take the course, take the exam, and get credit that they can then transfer to the university level. There's other programs and services as part of College Opportunity, specifically around fee waivers for low-income students. We continue to make investments for those students to provide opportunity at no cost. We also have expanded our college application fee waiver program through the benefits, through the generosity of our membership. So students who test on the SAT or PSAT using a fee waiver who are looking to apply to colleges automatically get sent college application fee waivers to their homes. And I just really quickly will wrap up the last piece around career opportunity. It's one thing to have students get career information, but it should be tied directly to the things that they're learning. We've developed partnerships with Donors Choose, Google, Road Trip Nation to allow students to really focus on working backwards from the things that interest them into the skills that translate into the classroom. So if a student says, I like computer science, well, here's all the skills that you need to have in order to be able to do that, and here's some possible careers. Let's map back and forth so we know what you need to be good at, where your strengths and weaknesses are, and how you continue to propel yourself forward. The partnerships are unprecedented in increasing access to STEM for low-income students and for females in underrepresented populations to get them into STEM programming and ensure that they have the proper skills to succeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Hurdle.
Hello, Lieutenant Governor Griffin. Thank you so much, and members of the council, thank you so much for having me. My name is Jinny Hurdle. I am one of the assessment consultants or account executives for Riverside Publishing. We represent the Iowa testing program. Riverside Publishing is the assessment arm of Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, one of the nation's leading curriculum providers. So what we do at Riverside is assessment. So within the state of Arkansas, you may be familiar with some of the assessments, of course, the Iowa tests. We also do gifted testing throughout the state with the cognitive abilities test. And then we also do some early learning with the Qualls Early Learning Inventory. Since the 2009-2010 school year, as part of the ACTAP program, Riverside partnered with Questar as a subcontractor to provide some of the norm reference portions of the benchmark exam. We still have districts throughout the state that use the Iowa as a standalone instrument at various grade levels. But the Iowa is available as a K-12 assessment. And so it is scaled for kindergarten through 12th grade administration with various subtests at different grade levels, including reading, written expression, math, science, and social studies. The Iowa tests have been around since 1935, and these are based on research from the University of Iowa. We do have a team of authors that are based there. They're led currently by Dr. Stephen Dunbar and Dr. Catherine Welch, and we've been the pioneers of a lot of basic information that you get from standardized assessments, like machine scoreable answer documents. That was pioneered with the Iowa program. Narrative reports to parents. Those were some of the things that we began. And then now we have online accessible reporting features that are available for all users. Our newest forms of the Iowa assessments, Forms E and F, are available with 2011 norms. Of course, the Iowa is a norm reference test, not a criterion reference test. The information that goes to inform Iowa based on state standards, international standards, NAEP frameworks, as well as feedback from educators, students, and parents. So all of that goes into the Iowa testing program and informs what makes up the Iowa assessments. Reasons that districts use the Iowa primarily include in identifying student strengths and weaknesses, as well as informing instruction, making placement decisions, evaluating programs, measuring growth throughout a school year and across grade levels. And now with the new forms, we also provide readiness indicators as well as ACT and SAT prediction scores that are available as part of the Iowa testing program. Along with the great history that we have with the Iowa testing programs, we also have a new assessment suite called Continuum. And in the packet that we provided for you all, we had provided a lot of information about Continuum. Continuum is a balanced assessment program that is made up of 3 different components. It is made up of a formative item bank that teachers can use to put together mini classroom assessments or short cycle assessments. It's also made up of a set of 3 adaptive benchmarks that can be administered in fall, winter, and spring, culminating in a summative assessment at the end of the year. So with Continuum, this is written to the Common Core, and this will be available beginning now in the 15-16 school year. So a little bit about me. I do come from an education background. I began my career as a high school teacher. I've been a junior high and high school principal and a district instructional coordinator. I base a lot of my success on my Arkansas education. I went to high school at Central High School in Helena and at Osceola High School in Osceola. And so, I come here today to speak to you all as a representative of Riverside, but also as an educator and a mother of 2 high school students today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll start with, okay, you want to start with Cindy? He wants to start over here. I don't care. Go ahead.
I'll go.
You complained last time that people took your questions, so go ahead.
But I had all night to prepare for those questions. My question for all 3 of you is, last week doing a list, or I'm sorry, last week, one of the people that spoke to us talked about how she was not able to use her own specific information inside the testing, getting ready for the test for her kids for the park. Do either one of you 3, I know you said that your kids can go in and get a personalized practice, but are teachers able to input their own information to test the skills that you're trying to find on your test?
I guess I could start. Well, let me make sure I'm clear on the question.
Yeah.
So the idea would be, can a teacher actually customize the test? I bet I didn't hear the question quite correctly.
Can a teacher, if you're testing for a particular skill and you have practice tests available for a student to test that particular skill, can a teacher upload her own curriculum into your program so that that student is testing their skill with the information they're being taught in that classroom from that teacher?
Okay, thank you. We're releasing a new form of formative test this fall called Skills Navigator. And what Skills Navigator would allow a teacher to do would be to pick specific areas of the curriculum. So say on a map test, that they found that they had a student that was a bit weak on fractions. What it allowed them to do would be test that student in depth on fractions and then and they choose which pieces of the curriculum they want to test. And then they could use that information to make instructional adjustments as they see fit.
But it'd be stuff that you chose, not what the teacher uploaded themselves.
We have a capacity to let teachers design their own tests, but yeah, to save the teacher work, basically the teacher chooses what parts of the curriculum they want to test, and then we provide an appropriate exam on those issues.
Okay.
So for the SAT and the PSAT and MSQT, teachers will have on our score reports information that maps directly back to your state standards. So we'll be able to tie the skills that we're measuring back to your standards. You will then be able to take that information into the practice platform that we've developed with Khan Academy and tailor the practice experience for those students. You can't necessarily tailor our assessments, but you can tailor the practice experience and you can monitor their usage. So if a student, if we've said that a student is strong in one area and weak in another, we need to make sure that the students are spending time on the areas where they're weak and not just reviewing content in the areas that are their best areas, because that's quite frankly not the best use of their time. So those tools will be available to teachers to tailor experiences based on an individual student. And if they don't have the time to do that, we'll do that on their behalf. So we'll tailor it based on quiz results and based on assessment results.
With our new continuum assessment suite, we do have two different formative exams that teachers can employ. First is the adaptive benchmarks. Now, these are tests that will change as students progress through those based on Common Core domains, and teachers will get results based on that. But I think one of the things that you're really wanting to get at is the ability for teachers to make practice materials customized according to their curriculum maps and where they are within a particular unit, where they are within their assessment, what they've taught. And for that, we have an item bank that's available for teachers to choose items that they would like to have on a short cycle assessment of whatever length that a teacher could determine for practice for their students. So it might be the capability of the teacher that all the fifth grade teachers want to get together and make a common assessment in math. Well, they could go into the item bank and pick and choose the items that they wanted to have on that based on what they've taught or what they plan on teaching. So have that available for them. That is throughout the continuum assessment suite.
A lot of frustration that our teachers have expressed to us is in the delivery of the PARCC exam. And this morning, PARCC and ACT both let us know that the delivery person was Pearson. And so, as it stands, a year from now, we could go with something else, hypothetically, and still have some of the same frustrations with the delivery. Are all three of you connected to Pearson, or do you deliver your own test? And if so, how accessible are you to people that would be in the building that would need technical support? How would that work?
We do have a relationship with Pearson. We use Pearson for our essay scoring and for scanning of our multiple choice items. So they do have a role in the scoring of the SAT. However, test development is owned by the College Board. We do that work. And the actual administration of the test is the responsibility of the teachers in the building. Through professional development that we provide, training, security protocols, all of those things, we provide those to your building folks. They administer the test, and that's all included in the cost of the assessment. So if a state or a district is sponsoring that, there's no additional charge for professional development. That's all included. So we go to great lengths to ensure that it's an equitable, fair, secure experience for all students. We do use Pearson as an operational back-end partner.
Pearson wants to crush us, so we don't have a relationship with them. Nor do we intend to have a relationship with Pearson at any point in the future. In terms of support in the field, when we're working within a large scale in a state, we commit to having support on the ground. For example, we have an account with Chicago Public Schools. We have support on the ground. For that account, we have always available technical support, both by phone and online, that's available to schools as it's needed. And as I said, we have a professional development network already in place here that serves our 90-plus schools. So we have a very nice infrastructure to support Arkansas.
Okay, again, we don't have any relationship with Pearson whatsoever. Riverside HMH, everything that we deliver online is built by us, and we use a slightly different format. Now, the Iowa tests are available in both paper, pencil, and online versions, and it is the exact same test that you have online as you have paper, pencil. So it is interchangeable. You can decide to give that either way you want to. With the new Continuum suite, we will also have paper, pencil, and online versions. So it could be the same kind of thing. It would be up to a district or to a state how they decided to administer those assessments. Our online engine works a little differently in that we don't do caching. It actually is an exchange, entirely web-based. We do use a secure browser, but we don't have downloadable caching in the same kind of way that other systems work. Ours is entirely an online experience.
Luke?
Hello, thank you for being here. My first question is for you, Dr. Cronin. We've been using NWEA map since before it was computer-based. We're testing right now. We test 3 times a year, and I can see the results from yesterday on my iPad today. My question, though, so I really like it. My question, though, is if it's rigorous enough, and does an adaptive test in and of itself not really rigorous enough because it's meeting the student where they are, and it gets easier if they miss it, and it gets easier if they miss it. And ultimately, that's not how life works. It's not how the AP tests work. It's not how the college entrance tests work. And I've seen while we have few students scoring at the 99th percentile, we have some students. And I see students topping out, so to speak, yet I'm not confident that when those same students take the PARCC test, they're knocking the PARCC out of the park. Then it's not where I was headed, but so can you speak to the rigor of MAP testing, and is in alignment with how expectations have been raised in recent years?
I think so. You pose an interesting question because it kind of goes to this question of, do you have to trade off the rigor of the test in order to get an accurate score? Mm-hmm. And I don't think you have to do those two things, but it's very important to understand how they work. The best feature of an adaptive test is that and this is particularly important if you want to measure growth, the best feature of an adaptive test is that you get a far more accurate result than you're going to get on a test that's simply testing at the level of the standard. So one of the frustrations I think that people run into with PARCC testing is if the vast majority of the items are at a college readiness level for every student. For a lot of students, you're not going to learn a lot about what they can and cannot do because they're just going to get frustrated and in many cases quit on the test itself. And if you're not getting valuable instructional information out of the assessment, it's probably not worthwhile. So I would not want to throw away the benefit of adaptivity in a MAP test. Now, what's important is the fact that the test adapts doesn't change the standard of performance required. And I think what's key, and this is something that we can support teachers in as well, is that folks understand what that standard is. And one thing nice about an item response theory-based scale is you can show what level of curriculum and what level of performance on that curriculum is necessary for students to be able to reach the standard. And teachers get information back from the test that say, here's what that both tells them what they can do and what they're also going to need to do to get to that level. So while it's true, I would concede that if you're a low-performing student, you're going to get an easier test, and I would add a far less frustrating test than you would get with Park. But you're still going to know where the standard is. You'll still have the information about where you're falling short. And most importantly, we're going to know with great accuracy where you're at so instruction can be correctly adapted.
So when I see the results, I only see percentiles that MAP is comparing students to other students, and then percent making growth, spring to spring, these sorts of things. Yeah. So, but am I missing that there's also a standard set that the student is performing at this? Can you say more about what that looks like? Because I'm not familiar with
Sure.
that
Well, what
part.
we would do on a blended assessment is we would work with you to go through a standard setting process. And during the course of the standard setting process, educators and others in the state would define what points on the scale represent various levels of performance and what kinds of skills and knowledge those represent for each student. Now, we do that in a state like Arkansas now through an alignment process where we align our scale to the passing points on the current state test. But if we were to do a blended map, we would actually run that process with you ourselves.
Okay. And then my follow-up question is really for all of you. If you can speak to what states are implementing the test kind of across the state. Like for example, what you just said, but then what states are using SAT, PSAT as kind of the state test, and same for Iowa. And along with that, does each of your tests meet what the states are required to do for No Child Left Behind, or do states have to use an additional test because your test doesn't really fulfill all of the obligations that a state has to meet?
I'll go first on this one. So the SAT is used statewide in Idaho, Delaware, the state of Maine, the state of Michigan most recently. PSAT also in New Mexico, Oregon, and Florida, several other states. So the PSAT has a slightly broader reach when we talk about statewide testing. We just participated with New Hampshire. New Hampshire just submitted their ESEA flexibility waiver, which included the SAT as the 11th grade assessment. So from our standpoint, we don't think that the feds would feel any differently about our test and its ability to meet the No Child Left Behind requirement. So from that standpoint, I think the SAT is a pretty valuable tool. In New Hampshire, both the legislative support and the educator support has been tremendous in that regard. And their primary concern is around giving a test to a student that actually provides a credential that has some consequence. By offering to pay for that assessment for all of their students, not only do they get the valuable data that comes with it, but they get all of those other services that the College Board sponsors to connect those students and propel them forward in college opportunities. So from that standpoint, I think that's one of the strengths of the College Board system.
For the Iowa assessments, obviously the state of Iowa uses the Iowa testing program. Also, the state of South Carolina has recently adopted the Iowa assessments as their grade 2 statewide assessment. But for the purposes of No Child Left Behind, that has been primarily based on a criterion reference test system. And so a norm reference test like Iowa hasn't fit that. Now, what states have done in these last, I'd say, 10 years or so, like Arkansas, is have an augmented system that would give both criterion reference scores and norm reference scores. So states that have done models like that include, of course, Arkansas, Georgia, Kentucky. They've had models where they use that. We can actually provide you all with a list of states that have used the Iowa program either as an augmented part or as a complete part of that. and in the test years that's been on offer.
So the blended model of map that we've outlined here has been through peer review in Utah and with the Bureau of Indian Education and passed peer review in those two places. We've also run the model, we're running the model for our interim testing in New Mexico, and it has State Department approval there. We're in conversation with 5 other states about the use of the blended model right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Calvin, just 1 second. I just want to remind you, Dr. Cronin, I think we can certainly call in your colleague. I think she's on the phone. Okay, just wanted to make sure. She comes in when I screw up. Oh, okay. All right, good. All right. You're doing well. Yeah, you're doing awesome. Okay. Mr. Trice.
Good afternoon. Dr. Cronin stated that MAP is in 90 schools across Arkansas. Are you all in schools across Arkansas also?
Probably the widest ranging program within Arkansas for the College Board is our Advanced Placement Program. Okay. PSAT had roughly 6,500 students last year take it. SAT about 1,200 students taking it. So we do have a presence here. Obviously, ACT has been the popular test here for a bit in terms of college entrance, but we still are administered here throughout the state.
Okay.
The Iowa assessments are also administered throughout the state at different grade levels, depending on what districts would like to do with that. So most particularly in the early primary grades, so kindergarten through 2nd grade, the Iowa is very widely used. Again, the companion test, the cognitive abilities test to use as a gifted education indicator, that's also used throughout the state. We do have some districts that give Iowa at different times of year because we do offer fall, mid-year, and spring norms for Iowa. Districts have the ability to purchase the Iowa and then give that at different times so they can get measurements for their students to identify information about their students whenever they would like to have that.
Okay. The purpose of all of you all's tests is to evaluate college preparedness, right? My daughter, she took the ACT the first time, and she made 21. She took the ACT prep, second time she made 27. So there are studies that talks about differences, race, socioeconomic, and all that. So you have the opportunity for a child to take a college prep course. Have you all measured exactly where you stop at college prep versus, okay, I know how to take a test? Because that's the essence of what the concern is in many communities, is that some cultures just don't take tests well. I don't take tests well. I made 18. So how would you respond to that?
Sure. So there are several studies that do show that students from differing backgrounds have different opportunities to learn and therefore perform differently on our tests. And that's a widely known issue that this system is intending to address. We realize that the quality of instruction varies based on resources available and based on zip code and all of those other variables that students don't control. What we've tried to do is level that playing field. So there's always been a perception that the SAT and quite frankly the ACT are coachable tests, that there are tricks and gimmicks and all sorts of things that a prep company can teach you on how to do better on the test, and if you spend enough money, you'll get a better score. What we're doing with the Khan Academy partnership is taking that completely out of play. By redesigning the test and making it more transparent and open, people know exactly what's expected. Our test specifications have been published online for nearly 2 years now. So the skills that are required, the components of the test, all of those things are publicly available. By then adding the Khan Academy platform to it, what we're saying is quality preparation, quality practice doesn't have to come with a price tag. And what we're doing is reinforcing the good work that's going on in the classrooms. So if a student is struggling with understanding words in context, We'll know based on the Khan Academy platform feedback, we'll know based on their assessment results, and we'll adjust that practice so that they're focusing on those areas where they need to improve. We're trying to level the playing field and create the opportunity for all students of all backgrounds, regardless of the quality of instruction that they've received in their classroom. That's been a primary focus of ours. We're trying to eliminate barriers of income and barriers of preparation through our products and services.
I want to reinforce what Matthew said. I think there are socioeconomic differences and there are resource differences that come along with that have a big impact, and those obviously have to be addressed. There's two things I'd say in regard to MAP that might be interesting in regard to this question. First of all, we've talked some about practice, and you cited an example of practice making a difference in terms of a student being ready for a final test. The MAP test is not a rehearsal for another test, or it's not a practice test. What the MAP test is trying to do is get as accurate an assessment of the individual student as possible to provide instructional information that is useful to the teacher. And so in that sense, it's different in character. Our goal, while our test can be used to monitor a student's progress toward college readiness over time, our goal is to give accurate information to the student and teacher that they can act on so that ultimately they get better at doing the curriculum and not just get better at doing the test. Now that said, there are other industry standard practices that every test publisher, including us, uses to evaluate items, and that's primarily diff analysis, but we also have experts review all the items that come into the pool for bias to determine whether there are characteristics in the test itself that are going to reflect bias or in our items. And we run those analyses and we remove items that don't pass those tests.
You have a comment?
Yeah, what I would like to add is, just to underscore what these gentlemen have said, that any assessment, no matter what you give, should provide actionable information for the classroom teacher, because there's no point in administering any assessment if the only thing you get at the end of it is a number that doesn't serve the student and doesn't serve the teacher any further. The important part is what happens at the end of that assessment with the information that you get. How is that going to change instruction? How is the teacher going to respond to the information that's provided about the student, about what they know and what they can be improved upon? I think those are the important things about any test. And again, I would also say that a test is one piece of a student's full range. That's one point in time, and that you have to look at other factors and not just a single test score to actually get a full picture of student performance.
Unfortunately, when people are trying to eat in college, that number is what they look at most. But thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you for being here today. My first question is for Mr. Lisk here. So I'm to the point now where I'm about to start applying to graduate schools and things like that. One problem that I'm seeing now is that, okay, some four-year institutions are taking AP credit. They differ on whether 3 is a credit or only 4 or only 5 or 4 and 5, and what you get credit for that is. But a lot of graduate schools aren't taking AP credit. Do you know why, or what's the problem there?
No, honestly, I don't have any insight that would be useful for that question for graduate school. I do know that AP is intended to show a student's ability to work at the college level, and I'm assuming that graduate schools are saying that they'd like to see some indicator of your ability to succeed in graduate school or in a doctorate program. So in terms of AP credit policies for those schools, I don't have a comment.
Okay. Well, I mean, the AP got me more than ready. I mean, the AP courses were very, very rigorous. I can attest to that myself. Also, just for clarification, the College Board assessments only start at 8th grade, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's one important distinction that I failed to mention.
Yes. Okay. So I guess what would you recommend using for, I guess, 3 to 8, or I guess 3 to 7, really? Do you have a recommendation, or is the College Board developing something else to be used?
Yeah, so we don't have an intention to develop tests for that 3 through 7 space. However, we have had conversations with Park and Smarter Balanced and other partners about crosswalking our assessment system to theirs so that there would be a consistent longitudinal model to measure growth. We feel pretty confident that we can map back to any system 3 through 8. So from that standpoint, we've been pretty flexible. We fielded a lot of good conversations with a lot of the folks who are in that space who, we think with a good sharing of data and some good thought behind it that we can create a model that's consistent over time. And what that allows is some flexibility for your ultimate system, that you can use multiple vendors, you can do some crosswalks, and we will be compatible and supportive in that way.
Okay, and then does Iowa, are they K-12, or, I mean, I know obviously Iowa goes all the way down to kindergarten, so.
It does, yes. The Iowa assessment is a K-12 assessment, so it's available for each of those grade levels.
Okay.
And then we offer a range of ACT and SAT predictions starting in grade 6.
Okay, and then, like I asked earlier, with the ACT, is there like a bundle package that like discounts, if the state adopts the whole Iowa testing service, does it lower the cost per student over the 12 grades or anything like that, or?
I'm sure that would be something that would be worked out on a contractual basis,
Okay.
yes. And so, what might be a published price if a school district were just going to buy, say, for their second grade, that would look very different than what, say, we would do as a statewide model.
Okay, and then for map testing, are y'all K-12 or?
Yes, so map testing is offered K-12. I think the thing that makes us unique is we have a 40-year heritage of growth measurements, so we have the ability to measure progress with a lot of sophistication, and that enables us to look at where a fifth grader is likely to end up, say, at grade 9 or 10 in a way that other testing organizations really can't. We also have done alignments to the ACT and can do alignments to the SAT.
Okay, and then so Iowa and MAP don't try to, like for instance, say that their 12th grade assessment is going to be good enough for college or anything like that. Like you kind of veer off towards the ACT or SAT in the end. Does that make? Sorry, I was confused. Like the Park testing was trying to be able to say this is college placement, but your programs aren't.
Well, I put it this way: SAT and ACT are the college placement tests of choice right now. So we don't intend to replace that. What we do is then we intend to complement them.
Agree. The same situation with Iowa. We are not in works with universities yet to say, okay, if you're in the 90th percentile in Iowa, this would give you this kind of credit. No, that's not something that we're working toward.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to clear some stuff up.
I just wanted to jump in on the pricing piece because we do, for our system, discount substantially for states and for districts who are participating, and that increases based on the number of assessments. So if you're sponsoring just the SAT, for your state, there's a discount for that. If you're using multiple pieces, such as PSAT and MSQT and SAT, then there's deeper discounts for that. We also, our pricing structure takes into account the financial circumstances of states and districts that we're working with in order to be able to put together a pretty compelling package. So,
Thank you.
I just have one question, and it's for each one of you. In comparison to the Park test, how much time is required to administer your test? Can you give me a...
I can answer that. So it depends on the grade level. So in kindergarten, it takes a total of about 2 hours and 40 minutes for the complete battery of Iowa. For first and second grade, it takes around 4 hours. Third through eighth grade, a total of 5 hours. But that does include, now that includes all of the subject batteries. So that is the complete test. So reading, written expression, math, science, and social studies. And then for 9th through 12th grade, it's around 4 hours.
Okay.
for the SAT, it's 3 hours and 50 minutes with the optional essay component. We are making essay optional this year, so for just the multiple choice section, it would be 3 hours total. For PSAT and MSQT, that total is 245 and for our 8th, 9th grade test, around 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Using the blended proposal, for our end-of-year assessment, the English language usage component would be an average of about 90 minutes, and the math component would be 60 minutes for a total of 2.5 hours. And then if there were a performance assessment component, that depends on what the state chooses to do, that would be about 1 hour to 2 hours in length total.
Okay. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. With your mapping test, you are compatible with Common Core, right? You have is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the Common Core standard is the basic. And with your mapping test, what if they're taking the mapping test and they're on the standard for their grade, are you testing above their grade too, or just to their grade and to their standards?
In an adaptive test, the direction the test goes depends on the student's performance. So in a blended model, here's basically how we would do it. We would begin the test by assessing the student relative to the Common Core standards for their grade level. And we would make a determination as to whether the student is proficient relative to those standards. Once that determination is made, then the test adapts up if the student seems to be performing above the standards, so that we are getting accurate measurement of how high that student actually is. If they're performing below the standard, we adapt the measurement or the items down so that we see what that student is capable of doing, which is essential if we're going to give the teacher good instructional information about the kid. But you assess, in a blended assessment, you assess the Common Core proficiency first, and then the test adapts to meet the needs of high and low performance.
Then it goes adaptive to see where that child is.
Exactly.
Okay, and you do computer and paper-based?
Almost all of our testing is done on computer, but we have the capacity to deliver paper and pencil tests when needed.
Okay, and yours are all paper or both?
Ours are currently all paper and pencil. We are planning on piloting the SAT online in spring of next year. As you can imagine, there's a lot of challenges with doing that. On any given Saturday, there's 600,000 kids in 170 countries around the globe, and we need to make sure that that experience is consistent and secure in all of those locations. It's a challenge to do that within a state and sometimes even within a district, so we're proceeding carefully in that manner. The intention for those pilots is the SAT in a linear format, so there's no plan for us to move to an adaptive format in the near future. So our challenge is just getting that SAT online. We've done some pilots in certain key districts throughout the country with a good representative sample. We think we've got some good answers there, but again, we're proceeding on a pretty cautious timeline with that.
The Iowa assessments are available as either paper, pencil, or online versions.
On the map, you are doing Kentucky, is that right, or not?
We are not.
What state have you done with Common Core, or are there any?
We don't currently have a state testing contract for summative testing. We test the vast majority of schools in Kentucky. We have a number of large school system contracts, including Baltimore County, Montgomery County, Chicago, and Detroit. And like I said before, our test has been, it's past peer review, so it's an NCLB acceptable test, but we're not currently holding a state contract.
Okay, so when you go into a state, you do it to their standards?
That's
You build
correct.
your test to their standards?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
I want y'all to defend, I want to hear your argument. If we, hypothetically, made a change, what we always hear from people that are pro status quo where we are now, which is Park. We hear a number of arguments as to why we should stick with Park. And I want to hear your response to each of those if we went with you. One is that, well, it gives you other states to compare with. Okay, that's the big argument for Park. Now, that's getting less and less, obviously, but that is an argument. If you read the editorials, if you read, talk to a lot of people at the Department of Education here in the state, that's what they'll say. Okay, they're going to say, well, you can compare it to other states, and another argument you'll hear is, well, Arkansas has written this test, and that was the last part. That was yours. Turn that thing off. And so you'll hear the second argument you'll hear, well, Arkansas teachers, they can't decide specifically, but they can propose, and then it's voted on by the consortium, and then, so that's a big second argument, not necessarily persuasive in my view, but it's an argument. What do you say, each of you, to those? And I'm sure there are we've heard other arguments as to why we should stick with Park. The third one is the old sunk cost, right? Well, we're already doing it, so we need to just keep doing it. That one's not persuasive for me either. But so what would you say, Doctor?
Well, taking them one at a time, you do get comparisons with other states with Park. Unfortunately, it's only the states that are using Park, so you don't get comparisons to any of the other states. On our assessment, we have a very large nationally representative norm group that comes from all 50 states that establishes norms both for performance and for growth. So we have norms for student achievement, we have norms for growth. We also have norms at both the individual student level and the school level, which means you can compare achievement across schools to our national sample, and you can compare growth across schools to our national sample. Those are things that you would not be able to do with Park, at least in its initial implementation. In terms of the argument that Arkansas teachers have participated in the writing of the test, virtually anybody who comes into the state to develop a test, including us, is going to respond to the needs of the state and engender the participation of the Arkansas Department of Education and Arkansas teachers in the development of the test. So we're not a one-size-fits-all test. That's not our heritage. Our heritage has been to develop tests to reflect the needs of the places we operate in. In fact, our first tests were developed locally, for local school systems. We only went to states after NCLD essentially required it. I would tend to probably agree with you on the sunk cost thing. If ultimately the state decides that it's important to make a change, the sunk costs are unfortunate, but it's appropriate to move on at that point. And it's up to the state to evaluate the investment.
So my argument about comparing your data to other states' data would be that the intent of data is supposed to be that it's actionable. And the fact that you've beaten or not beaten another state, I'm not sure exactly how you act on that data. It's an ego thing, it's certainly a pride thing, but it's not actionable, and it's not doing anything to the benefit of your students. So from that standpoint, I think that's a pretty weak argument or as a reason to stick with an assessment. We do provide the ability to compare against other test takers. We do have norms established. We do have the ability to tie our assessment to your state standards. So from that standpoint, that is a more meaningful, actionable data set that you can go with. In terms of Arkansas teachers being part of the development. The College Board as a membership organization has some unique structures in place in order to be able to ensure that we're representing our membership in the appropriate way. That includes test development committees, review processes, teachers, faculty from higher ed, all a part of our test development process. So after we sit down and write items, they go through thorough review. Both through our assessment design and development group, but also with our teachers and our faculty. So the participation, there's an opportunity for Arkansas educators to participate in the development of SAT, PSAT, and AP. And unfortunately, I don't have the test development committee list, but I'd be willing to bet there's at least 2 Arkansas educators in our test development pool right now.
Well, we give a lot of credence to the ACT, and I'm sure that while there may be an Arkansan or some involved in that, they're not in the way described with Park, certainly.
Yeah, agreed.
And we've never said we're not going to accept that.
Yep.
It's recognized as.
Yep.
Ms. Rob?
I just
Oh, yeah,
real
go ahead.
quickly, the third point was
Sunk
costs. Yeah, I wish we could do something for you on the money you've invested
You can.
already. We can, and we can more importantly provide services for your students in a greater way, in a greater scale. And while you've already made an investment, we can continue to make investments in your students going forward. And I think that's the way we can sort of offset your sunk costs in a way, is that we will continue to provide opportunities for the students of Arkansas.
Well, sunk costs are sunk.
Sunk.
Exactly. Thank you so much. The Iowa assessments provide information across a national sampling of students. And so to understand where students are in comparison with other students at the same grade level, there really isn't another instrument that provides the kind of quality, reliability, and valid information that the Iowa has for since 1935. There's not another instrument that's like that. We also can provide local norms so that you can look at just how your students are performing against their own peer group. And those local norms are available at whatever level is appropriate. So it might be available at the district level, or at a diocesan level, or at a state level. Those can all be done with research, with our research department with Iowa. In terms of Arkansas being involved with that, Arkansas educators and Arkansas standard sets have been involved in the structuring of the Iowa test, but more importantly, Arkansas students were involved in the standardization of the Iowa, and they have been involved with that. And I know in this latest iteration, so in the 2010-2011 school year, I was involved with Arkansas school districts that were taking this new form of the Iowa, and they were included in the standard setting for this test. And in terms of the sunk costs, what I would point out is the kind of professional development that Riverside is able to provide for Arkansas teachers around using the data from test scores. That's something that we pride ourselves on, is going back and explaining how to use the information in the classroom to make changes and to assist students. So what do these scores mean? How can I use this to actually help my kids in my class? What am I going to do when, if they took the Iowa in the spring, what am I going to do when those kids come to my classroom in August based on those test scores? And that's what we'd like to provide.
One more quick question for you, Doctor. This question was suggested to me, and I just want to make sure it's clear on the record. So how long is your test taking if you're doing an end-of-the-year test?
The summative test, math and reading, would be about, let me start over. English language arts, blended model, summative test at the end of the year would be 90 minutes roughly for that test on average. The math test would be 60 minutes. Okay. The question would be whether there's a performance component, which in the blended model would be proposed for winter. And the length of that depends on what the state would decide is the design requirement if they were to implement that.
Gotcha.
Hey, good afternoon. Just a few quick questions. Dr. Cronin, for MAP, and we use MAP in my district and it goes very smoothly. Will there ever be a writing component?
That's part of what we've proposed is if there is a performance component or a writing component required, We would offer that component during the winter. It's something that we would probably partner on. I would suspect not with Pearson to get that done. But we would partner with an organization that's experienced in the administration of writing
And
assessments.
so when you're saying blended, you're criterion referenced, so you don't have to blend with another criterion reference. Can you
Yes.
explain that a little bit?
So when we use the term blended, what our normal test is fully adaptive.
Correct.
Which means from question one, it adapts to the student's achievement level. For purposes of No Child Left Behind, the law requires that the grade level standards be fully assessed. So in a blended model, we do the assessment of the grade level standards first, and then based on how the student performs, we let the test fully adapt. That's why we call it a blended model.
Got it. So questions 1 through 20 might be uniform, and then it starts to.
Exactly.
Perfect. Mr. Lisk, to use the SAT, you say that the states have required a waiver. That is to get around the criterion reference. Is that correct? And just use a norm reference?
No,
Am I understanding that correct?
actually, this has been a topic that's come up recently around the SAT being norm reference versus criterion reference. We think that putting those assessments into one category or the other, especially given some of the innovations in test development, test design, is probably not the best way to look at things. We think that the assessment will be both, if you want to use the traditional definition. So there will be norms against which students can be measured. They will have percentiles in which they can see where they stand, but it's also going to tie back to the criterion of those state standards. So you're going to know performance against those standards and whether a student is meeting those standards or not meeting those standards. For students that are meeting those standards, we have programs like advanced placement to say, okay, you've met the standard. Let's use some of the predictive value of the assessment like PSAT and MSQT and see if those students are capable of doing that higher level work through AP. So we've got the ability to provide a wealth of information back to the classroom. And we're going to provide a bunch of professional development to help folks understand how to best use that information in their classrooms.
Okay, thank you. And you may have said this, but the optional writing on the SAT, is that also included in the PSAT 8-9?
No, so the writing component, the essay component will only be in the SAT. We do measure writing skills in the 8-9 test and in PSAT and MSQT, just not through an essay. It's through multiple choice.
Okay. That's all.
And one just quick clarification on the essay, we are moving to an essay written to a source. So our current SAT model, our current SAT essay is only 25 minutes. It's a prompt, and it allows students to do some sort of free-form response. There's been criticism of the value of that, that it can be coached, that there's some sort of formula for success. You write more words, then maybe you'll do better. So we've decided to move more towards what our higher ed folks are saying are like the writing assignments they're getting in college. There's a source document. They'll be asked to analyze that source document. We'll extend the period of time to 50 minutes to allow them to do that. So they'll read and then respond. And there's the essay prompt is out there right now. It's the same prompt for every form of the test. It's publicly available. And the only thing that will change will be the source document to which they're referring.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, once again, I really don't have, I'm enjoying listening and thinking of, I have I have a senior and a college freshman, but I have a high school freshman and a 7th grader, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, which test of all these companies that I've heard today is going to let me know and let him know whether of course he's going to have some adaptive when he becomes a college freshman, but what's going to let us know if he's completed his courses well enough to not have struggle? So why would I choose yours to show me that?
I will. Okay. I would say, the Iowa assessment can provide very actionable information, and information about where your 7th grader is in comparison with other 7th graders nationally. And so it will let him know where he is. It will also reveal where, let's say he took it as a 6th grader, how has he grown, has he met a growth expectation of what we say is adequate growth from 6th grade to 7th grade? Or has he exceeded that growth expectation through high quality instruction? And so this test can show that over years and years, decades worth of research.
So a couple of things. I think one, any assessment's going to give you some data about your son, your daughter, to be able to act upon. The question is what other opportunities are available through that participating in that assessment. So, for example, taking the PSAT and MSQT not only gives you that robust set of data, but it also qualifies you for an extensive amount of scholarship dollars, whether through the National Merit Partnership that we have or all the other expansion that we've done recently with other scholarship providers to increase the pool of that amount by $180 million this year. So from that standpoint, you've got all the added benefits of the participation in that service. We also have a student search service, which if a student is willing to opt into providing their information to higher education and to other nonprofit scholarship opportunities, they proactively reach out to your son or daughter and give them the information about their schools. It's a good opportunity for them to be found in a world where it sometimes is hard to stand out. So if you say, I'm willing to hear from these universities, the universities will contact you and provide information and sell themselves to you about the benefits of attending their institution. And the robust platform that we're building with the Khan Academy will allow your student to get assessment results and tailor a practice program for them specifically. That takes into account all of the things that we know that research has said are skills that are required to be successful in post-secondary endeavors, and serves up content to them that's in a way that they can absorb it. So it's in addition to what they're hearing in the classroom. So if something doesn't make sense in the classroom, there's 3 other ways we can deliver it at home through an online platform, on their phone, on a computer, in a computer lab, wherever they happen to have internet access, to reinforce some of the things that they're hearing. So maybe it doesn't make sense the first time, but if they sit and have one of the content providers on Khan Academy sharing a lesson with them, sharing personal experiences, breaking it down into more consumable nuggets of ideas and concepts, then maybe that's the thing that triggers that understanding of that skill or that concept. So there's the assessments are going to provide great data back to you. It's what other things can those assessments provide in addition to it.
It's okay. It was an interesting question because you talked about whether the kid would have the things they need to succeed in their coursework. And
Well,
actually,
he's my kid, so I know he's going to. But
well, we all know
no,
that, of course.
But it's the feedback going up, at each grade level,
Right.
But then at 12th grade, I don't want him to start college and be one that may need, think he's prepared and get there and realize, oh, no, I'm not. And using the wrong assessment is key, or using the right assessment is key to having some type of It's not the only evaluation for success in college at all, or career, technical institute, or being able to read technical manuals.
So let me offer a quick answer.
Yeah, it gives some feedback.
Yes, I was going to go ahead and answer. Do you want to answer?
Yeah, and I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing just because there's a delay on the web link. But what I wanted to share is, both as an educator and as a parent, I have a child that just started college, and I have twins that are in 6th grade. And I think one of the things that I love about math and that I love about this blended model, I've been an educator and I've worked with the Department of Ed, is that I know not only where my kids are, but what their needs are, and I know it from an early age. And I have, one of my kids is really gifted, and one of them struggles a little bit. And if my kids take a traditional summative test, The one that is really gifted, all I know is that he knows everything on grade level, right? Because he brings home his test, and most of the time, he hasn't missed a thing. And I don't know anything else, and neither does his teacher. And when a student takes what we're suggesting in a blended assessment, you know at the state level, is that child advanced, proficient? Where is that child? But you also, the educator is going to get information back quickly. You're not going to wait months. And the parent, you're going to know, what do they know? Is it above grade level? Or in the case of my other twin, is it a little below grade level? And what do they need to work on next? And we also have all kinds of instructional links and ties. We work with Khan Academy, work with a number of different groups. And so having that information at hand really blends the best of both types of assessment and the best of both worlds. And so I become pretty passionate about it, both as an educator and a parent.
Yeah, that's well. But that's really, for parents, it's a really important thing. It's not just the testing for the school districts. We parents look at that and map our own child, grade to grade. And I haven't really known how to use them because I'm not getting enough information from the one little graph. I would like to be able to get more information as a parent and more specifics back to be able to, find out exactly what element in English or what area of math. And I didn't realize that until I started on here listening to the teachers, how they assess. And I'm like, well, I do that too. I'm constantly assessing my child too throughout the school year. So yeah, the assessments are really important.
Hi, thanks for being here. I'm Jinny Gartman, and Mr. Lisk, I actually have 9 AP statistics students sweating great drops of blood over the AP stat test right now.
I take no responsibility for that.
No, but I've enjoyed the AP part of it for a few years, and I think they really do a good job in there. But I wanted to clarify one thing about what you said about the 4, I think you mentioned Idaho, Delaware, Maine, and Michigan. They use that as the summative state assessment. They just give the SAT each year to 9, or in your 8-9 model.
Yeah, so each one of them has a slightly different system. In terms of federal accountability, Maine was the one that was using the SAT for that purpose. The others have either legislation or some sort of readiness scorecard, of which a college entrance exam score is a component of that. So, for example, in Idaho, they've got a pretty complicated formula in terms of measuring readiness of students that includes that metric. So each one of them is using it for different things. Delaware, for example, uses the entire system. So they test students in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and now potentially even 12th grade. Because what they're finding is more information is better. The data that's coming back is useful for making changes in their classrooms. And what the key finding that they just came up with was that despite the fact that we make fee waivers available for our assessments for students to participate on a Saturday, and despite the fact that those low-income students have one of the tests paid for by the state, when they have an opportunity to come back and take the test again on a Saturday, they're not showing up because it's not part of their school day. It's part of a Saturday. And that comes with job and family responsibilities, and a test is 12th on their list of things to do on a Saturday. So Delaware has said it's worth it for us to make sure that those students have the opportunity to take a test, understand where they are, spend the summer and the fall preparing, and then take another test and see if they can increase the score so that they can have a better credential to present to their higher ed institutions. So from that standpoint, each one of the states has a unique circumstance that they're trying to accomplish, but all of them are using the SAT for that purpose.
And no other summative type test like PARC or any of the others that.
So in Michigan, the college entrance exam is actually part of a 3-day test Day one is college entrance exam, day two is a work skills assessment, and then day three is a homegrown augmentation component for items that aren't covered on the college entrance exam. So they use it for that purpose, and they're in the process of redesigning, but they had originally taken items from all three assessments and created their own scorecard for that.
Okay.
So.
And Mr. Cronin, I'm not familiar with the MAP tests at all because I teach at the secondary level, and for all I know, our district may use them, and I don't even know it down in the lower grades. It sounds like a great tool for measuring growth, but the adaptive nature of the exam seems like it wouldn't really be conducive for summative assessments so much maybe at the high school level. I'm thinking mathematically in that we definitely want all of our kids to show growth, every day if possible. But just because they've shown growth, through all their years, doesn't necessarily mean that when they hit 11th grade, they're ready for Algebra 2. So how does that work at the secondary level?
Well, all the state tests at this point are general assessments of mathematics and reading, right? So if you're using them for a summative purpose, and you're talking about a different purpose, I want to talk about that too.
Well, we have, in Arkansas, we have an assessment course-specific, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2.
Okay, I'm sorry. So first of all, we offer course-specific assessments. We offer an Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry assessment. So that would align with what you're doing right now. And then we can demonstrate scores on our assessments that generally predict good performance in those classes. So if you're taking a general math assessment, results on that, for example, we use algebra as an example. Student performing at a 235 level on our test generally performs to a B grade or better in their Algebra 1 class. So we do have that capacity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all for being here. I'm Sharice Dean, mom of 4 kids and former homeschooler. So my question, I've gotten a lot of feedback from current homeschool moms and parents, and probably the most concerning question they have right now is if my child, like for instance, my children were homeschooled, they're in public school now. They transitioned fine, but a lot of parents are concerned that the testing companies are changing the test to align with Common Core. So they're concerned, will my child not be able to score well on these assessments because I've been homeschooling, or if they've been in private school, they haven't been under Common Core. I know you all addressed that earlier, but I'd like you to address that from the perspective of children going from homeschooling to public or from private to public or whatever.
I can go first since I think we're the one that's doing the most changing right now. So in redesigning the SAT, the motivation was not to align to Common Core standards, and it wasn't to become a Common Core test. It just so happens that that the research that's underlying a lot of the changes to the SAT is similar to the research that the Common Core standards is based on. So there are certain skills that the research has shown are required for post-secondary success. So from that standpoint, they are based on the same set of reports that we've been looking at. But what we've tried to accomplish with the redesign of the SAT is to make it a better assessment, more reflective of what students are learning in the classroom, to take away some of those barriers that people have been saying have been associated with the SAT. So, one of the criticisms of the SAT is that it's a logic test, that it's not measuring what's learning in the classroom, that it's, people are still using the word aptitude with SAT. That, again, it's something that can be prepped for or paid for. That the more money you have, the better preparation you can get for it. So that's really been the motivation behind the redesign is to make it a better assessment. Did we have an opportunity to make it more aligned to what's going on in the classrooms? Yeah, and we're taking advantage of that. If instruction is changing and curriculum is changing and standards are changing, we want to make sure that our assessment reflects that changing undercurrent and still provides the value to the higher ed institutions as a college entrance credential. Because at the end of the day, that's what our higher ed membership is using that credential for, is to understand what is the likelihood of that student succeeding on their campus.
Yeah, what I would say about the transition with Iowa and homeschool, or any kind of entity that doesn't use Common Core standards, is that's okay, because Iowa can inform Common Core. The newest forms, ENF, can inform Common Core, but it wasn't written strictly to Common Core. So there are traditional Iowa test domains that are reported. Common Core domains can also be reported. But in the co-ops now, even here in Arkansas, the earlier forms of the Iowa, I think A and C, are offered to homeschool students. And so we offer the Iowa to a variety of different entities that may not use Common Core. And it is a very good measure of student performance at each grade level, irrespective of whether they have Common Core or whether they don't.
I want to address the question you asked directly, because we have some research on the subject. The question was, would your student be disadvantaged if they move to a Common Core assessment? We've seen probably at this point 80% of our student population move to new tests, some of which are Common Core aligned, some of which are not. What we're learning from that experience is that students don't seem to be disadvantaged by the move. That they seem to be doing quite well, and that they maintain and improve on their past level performance. I think one particular advantage, and I'm only speculating on this, but I think one particular advantage that homeschool parents actually have is that you're often in a homeschooling situation asking your kids to do a lot of the kinds of things that are required to be successful in college. They're commonly doing a lot of writing. They're commonly doing a lot of projects. You're commonly doing a lot of work where the kids are working with novel problems. If kids are doing that kind of thing, they're going to be really well situated for success on these, not just on these kinds of assessments, of course, but eventually in college. And the record of homeschooling kids in college has been really good, as you know.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. Dr. Cronin, we use MAPS testing at my school, and the teachers have found it to be very profitable for them as far as, being able to see where their students are and where they need to be and what they need to work on. So we really do like that kind of testing. With your experience in testing for so many years, how important do you feel that state testing or national testing at all levels is? Is it more important to test growth, like in a MAPS test, regularly with a program like MAPS, or what age should we actually introduce national testing? I just was interested in your opinion.
So you'd like to know what age that we would introduce
or what
it at?
level.
Or what level? Let me just give you a general answer to that question. It may not be as specific as you like, but you can force more if you want to. My bias would be that for accountability purposes, accountability is important, but you want the footprint on accountability to be relatively light, because most of the time you're spending an assessment, you want to spend delivering assessment that's instructionally useful in the classroom. So what are the pieces I need for accountability? Well, basically, you want an assessment of the student's performance in key domains, and you want an idea of what their level of growth is. One doesn't need an extraordinarily elaborate testing program to get to that level of information. That can be done relatively efficiently. And in terms of the age at which I'd start, my bias would be probably to start a little bit later. With that, to start, definitely, my bias would probably be not to start in kindergarten, because you have other other factors that may interfere with your ability to do good measurement. But I guess my point is, I think a state can get what it needs for accountability with a relatively light footprint on its test, and then make the bigger investment in assessment tools, and particularly professional development that's going to be instructionally useful to teachers in the classroom. That's where I'd spend my money.
So you think that your type of testing, the MAPS testing, is important because it actually does show where the student is, what their weak areas are, and where the focus needs to be in order to move them up to grade level or where they need to be?
Yes, but while that's true, I don't believe that it's everything. I think the other key component to assessment is the classroom teacher's ability to assess herself or himself in the moment. And that's it's an area that we're working on, but it's an area that's commonly kind of ignored in these conversations.
I'm a teacher, so I agree with you. Thank you.
I know we're running low on time, but we are going to finish these last two council members 5 minutes out, and then we'll take our 10-minute break.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I've had some experience in the past with the Little Rock School District, which is the largest district in the state with the Northwest evaluation. And I can remember we would test the students, as she was saying, and now I understand it's called the MAP. And also we using the Iowa test of basic skills in first and second, and we use the QUALS test for the kindergarten, so I'm very familiar with that. And I think I did take an SAT way back, and I'm not going to say when. But I like what I hear when you say put the cost back with the professional development, because I know we spend a lot of money testing. And with that cost, and then we hear people say we need more professional development, well, then you have to carve out of a small budget how much is spent on testing, how much on professional development, and how much on the other resources that are in your school. So to get a good balance of that, what would you say in percentages? You know, like, for example, with the ESA, I think if you have a Title I school, you have to spend a certain percentage on parental involvement if you get that particular funding. If you don't get that funding, you're still expected to do that, just with no funding. So if you were to pie it out in a graph, what percentage would you suggest for testing, and what percentage for professional development of a budget?
I could probably start this time. Probably where I would start would be looking at the nature of the professional development that you're delivering. So for us, first of all, it's absolutely critical to have really strong online resources, and that's something that should be included in the basic cost of testing. So we offer training in how to read reports, how to make instructional use of the data. All that's available anytime on demand to a teacher through either tutorials or video. That's important because you can't deliver it all on a staff development day, so you have to have it available there. The second thing is on-site training is critical, and that does require an investment, but in our case, we have what you're looking for there, and I think one thing that's key to controlling costs is you want a lot of those boots already on the ground and not flying in from Portland like I did last night. If you do that, that keeps the cost down, and we have that kind of network built already. And then you want supports inside the school, in other words, training of trainers models, so that schools can eventually take control and care of their own support. If you do that, the cost associated with professional development doesn't have to be extreme. Now, I'll invite Debbie to make a comment here, but if you were asking us for a ballpark as to what proportion of the overall budget ought to go to that, my initial guess would be roughly 20 to 30% of the budget. I would want to go there in the ideal world. Not hearing her chime in on that one. So. Oh, wait a minute. I spoke too soon. Real quick.
Yeah, I was trying to think through it in my head, but yeah, usually I would say 20% is probably about right.
Okay.
So for SAT and PSAT, we provide professional development at no cost. For some other programs, some of our advanced placement professional development does have a cost associated with it, but as a nonprofit membership organization, we're just purely trying to cover costs. We're not trying to generate revenue as a result of sponsoring workshops. What we feel is if you're making the investment in your students to sponsor the assessments, then it's our responsibility to help you figure out how best to use that data. And ultimately, the professional development around test security and on all of those kinds of things, there's just a responsibility we have to protecting the security and the fidelity of the administration. So from that standpoint, cost, I would say there's none. Time is really your biggest cost. Do you have the time to invest in it? And I know when we're asking teachers and counselors to do things outside of their day job, sometimes it's a tough sell. That's why we go to the same lengths as the folks here do to provide it in on time, in your own on-demand way. Whether it's online or in person or through manuals or however you consume information, we do our best to accommodate that. But from a budget standpoint, we're not saying that you have to spend any additional dollars.
And I would say for the Iowa, we do have digital resources that are built into our new platforms that, for kind of ancillary materials that have traditionally been a per fee cost, those are now included with the new forms of the Iowa. And so all of those are free and accessible to teachers and administrators on demand. And then assessment consultants on the ground here in the state and throughout the southeastern region can provide professional development on both pre-test and post-test workshops for teachers and administrators on actually how to administer the test and then how to access and use the results on the back end. So we provide that. But even further than that, HMH can also provide coaching services throughout the school year in connection with our Leadership and Learning Center. So in terms of things like data teams and working with instructional improvement throughout the school year, not only with the Iowa assessment, but with whatever assessment can be used, those are professional development services that we can provide.
Thank you.
We're running late. Go ahead.
NWEA is also a non-for-profit, and while we've built a strong network across the state as well for professional development, and while there is some cost to professional development, I think it's really critical to ensure that you have that in place. We also do a mixture of online and face-to-face, but ensuring that educators know how to use the data that they get back and how to tie that back to instructional resources and can, administer with fidelity is really critical. And the success of your program really depends on that. And so, being a nonprofit, we also agree that it's important to do as much as we can and give back, but we wouldn't want to sacrifice the strength of that PD.
Again, just pointing out for the record, the NFL is also a nonprofit. Many Blue Cross, Blue Shield associations are nonprofits, and many large hospitals are nonprofits. So just for the record.
I think the NFL just gave up their nonprofit status.
Thank you.
I think I did just see that.
As a former member of the Ways and Means Committee, I was advocating for that.
Well, I thank all of y'all for being here today as the last council member here, and I opted for that. I want to especially thank Ms. Hurdle and Mr. Lisk because I took the SAT and the Iowa test, and being one of the oldest members on the council, I'm glad that the tests I took are still around even though they've changed. So I want to thank y'all for that. It makes me feel a little bit better. I'm going to direct most of mine to Mr. Lisk because of my background as a career teacher for 27 years. I have some special interest in this, so I'm going to ask you to clarify a few things not that it doesn't relate to everyone, but it's especially interesting to me. When the students take the 8th and 9th grade versions, do they get a predictor for the SAT since that's so important for college?
Yeah, we're going to have established benchmarks that will predict likelihood of success on the successive tests in the system. So the 8-9 benchmark would predict success on the PSAT and MSQT. The PSAT and MSQT benchmark will predict success on the SAT. So it'll be a predictor of the next assessment, and then the SAT is the one that predicts likelihood of college success.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Now, as far as, I want to make sure I clarify this, the Khan Academy personalized practice, that is free to everyone?
That is free to everyone. No
You don't have
charge.
to be taking the test to use it?
You don't have to be taking the test. And the beauty of that is if ultimately it's not our assessment system that a student is preparing for, if the skills are the same and the standards are the same, if we're talking about college readiness standards, you know, there might be some variations within that, but they're college readiness, like preparing students for being ready for college, then the Khan Academy platform would support that as well. So we're talking about developing the skills for success. The Khan Academy platform could potentially be used for purposes beyond preparing for the SAT.
And could you, once again, just run over what you said about how it ties to the career part? If I think that's through the SAT, you mentioned that.
Yeah, so the SAT is not turning into a hardcore career skills assessment, but we're trying to supplement the work that we do with a career exploration component. It's something we've always had but hasn't been terribly utilized. So we've been looking for ways to engage students in a bigger conversation. And I tie it back to my nephew who, you know, got to 11th grade and decided he wanted to be a video game designer, and sort of, you know, he's at 11th grade at this point. There were certain classes he needed to take if he was really interested in that, in pursuing that in college. So starting that conversation earlier so students can say, here's what drives me, here's what interests me, here's where my passions are, and then help them get into understanding, do they have the skills that are associated with pursuing that? What sort of colleges and universities support the work that you're looking to do? And do you have all the information you need, or are there other components that we can plug in?
So this starts in the 8th and 9th grade version?
It starts in the 8th and 9th grade, and it's, you know, it's an interest inventory, if nothing else. It's through Road Trip Nation, with our partnership with them, really engaging content. If you've never watched their PBS show, I would highly encourage you to do it. They put people of varying backgrounds into a big green RV, they roll them around the country, and they interview people. They just interviewed Howard Schultz. They interview people just like them that's got to start from a variety of different backgrounds to understand where they came from and how they got there. So that's what we're looking to integrate into the SAT readiness system.
Now, I'm a little confused on the PSAT. Do most of the high schools in Arkansas not give that since it's linked to the National Merit Scholarship?
You know, it is a state-sponsored option for 10th graders, for 11th graders, I believe. And it's not as popular a choice within the state of Arkansas as we would have liked it to be. But it is linked to the National Merit Scholarship. Students do have the option to participate on their own.
So, I mean, and I have to go back because I don't teach at high school, but my students, when my sons were in that grade, they took it as part of their school day, they took the PSATs.
Yeah, so we, for this fall coming up, it will be offered on 2 Wednesdays. So it will be in the school. The school has to make the decision to sort of disrupt their school day to be able to sponsor it, but it will be available on 2 Wednesdays this fall. And that qualifies students for not only the National Merit Scholarships, but all the additional money through the Jack Kent Cook Foundation and a bunch of other sponsors that we've got.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Could you submit an example of parent-teacher report just at some point to the council?
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be great. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Appreciate y'all. Very, very helpful. And I know it's been a long travel day for some of y'all, but appreciate you being here. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to do our last panel for the day.
Thank you.